Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. One of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts Alex and Sean. On this episode, we're going to be talking about the huge, improbable Bears victory over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And we'll be talking about some Blackhawks news and notes, and maybe sprinkle a few more things in there here and there. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. Sure, the season is not currently going on, but that shouldn't stop you from heading on over to icehogs.com, getting yourself a hat, shirt, jersey, signing up for season tickets, and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex, I'm not sure if you watched the game or not. I'm sure you did, but man, these Chicago Bears games are just not good for old hearts.
No, they are not for the faint of heart whatsoever. I watched the first half of this game at Harry Carey's in Lombard, and the Harry Carey's restaurants are doing these really cool things where they're sponsored by one of the radio stations here, and they have these outdoor watch parties. So my folks and I went because they wanted to go. So, you go outside, you sit outside on the patio. They have the fireplace going. You could sit around the fireplace. They have the heaters going, and they have the TVs outside. And, you order yourself some dinner, a few cocktails. And, I mean, Sean, every Bears fan can agree that before they scored their first touchdown in the second quarter, which was with, less than 2 minutes ago, every minute before that first touchdown, I mean, that game was just brutal and ugly to watch. And it looked like it was going to be a laugher early. And if this was most other Bears teams that we've watched, this probably would have been an absolute laugher. But it was one of those games where even though they looked terrible, and I didn't think they were going to win, but I was still thinking, man, the fact that they're only down 13-0 feels kind of like a win. And then I came home and I watched the rest of the game, and it was another exciting, close one. And this was an exciting win where you can say this was heart pound to the last second, but you feel good about this one because it was against Tom Brady and the Buccaneers and not like the Lions or the Falcons. And as good as those wins felt, this one truly felt like no doubt the best win of the year. I mean, there's no question it's the best win of the year so far.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the most important so far because really we're looking at this as after that Colts game, going into the Colts game, I mean, they were 3-0, went to 3-1, and we're like, man, in a span of, less than a week, we could go from undefeated to 3-2. That's not the place we want to be, especially with a team that is really struggling on offense. So it was important to come out and get this victory, especially after a really, really bad showing offensively against the Indianapolis Colts. So this game came out, and initially you're like, okay, the offense is doing some things, but then everything just went brutally cold. And although the Bucs weren't scoring touchdowns, you just felt like at any moment that they were going to blow this game wide open.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Because one of the biggest things that you look at in this game is obviously Tom Brady is Tom Brady, and that's all everyone is talking about. But you had to look at the team itself. They had a good running game. And the Bears have not been able to stop the run well this year, big factor being Eddie Goldman out. And they were establishing the run early. They were getting runs in big chunks. And they were doing a good job of just making the right plays at the right time early on. And, it easily could have been a worse score. So you got to give the Bears defense some credit there. But, they were playing good football in the first half. And, we saw the epitome of Nick Foles in this game. When it's good, it could lead to wins. But we saw early on Nick Foles looked terrible the first quarter and a half. I mean, brutal. We saw that deep shot that any elite quarterback, consistent one, would have hit Darnell Mooney perfectly, and he did a great job at getting open. And you even saw on an early screen pass, I think it was to Anthony Miller, it was as easy as it gets, and he overshot him. So that first half, I mean, nothing was going right for the Bears. The only thing that really was going right for the Bears is that they were holding them to under 20 points in the first half.
Yeah, the defense was on point. As much as people were like, oh, they're giving up run plays, and sure, they gave up a lot of run yards, but you look overall, and they scored 19 points. This is a team that we can't say that they were in a rut. They have the greatest quarterback in the history of the NFL. They have arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL. The offensive line was clicking, and their quarterback threw 5 touchdowns last week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, they won that shootout against the Chargers.
Yeah, and the Chargers are a team that really did a great job of controlling the Chiefs for 3.5 quarters. And so you're like, okay, the Chargers have a pretty good defense, and Tom Brady just eviscerated them. And you're like, man, but you look at this, and sure, they gave up 100. Ronald Jones had 106 yards rushing. It's 107, somewhere right around there, just over 100 yards. But Tom Brady looked pedestrian. And when you get down to it, they pressured Tom Brady at the final stats on 43.2% of his dropbacks. That's the highest rate in a game since 2017.
And you know what's just awesome is that he wanted absolutely nothing to do with Khalil Mack. As soon as he saw Khalil Mack just coming at him, he just kind of curled up in a ball and went fetal position on the ground.
Khalil Mack, what was this quote? Smelled blood in the water. Like, he knew that they was able to get it. And this is not against scrubs. Like, that Buccaneers line is much improved. And Khalil Mack had 6 pressures, 2 should have been 3 sacks, and Robert Quinn had 5 pressures. So Robert Quinn actually had more, like, the higher percentage of pressures. So he got on the snaps that Robert Quinn was in, he got pressure on 18% of them. So 18%, and Khalil Mack had 17.6%. So they both were just absolutely on his back, and Khalil Mack brought it home. And I think the emphasis was when he took Wirfs, the tackle, and just one arm flinged this 350-pound man onto the ground like he was a rag doll.
That lineman's got a lot of talent, I think. I think he's going to be a very good player, but that was just a great example of, like, experienced versus rookie right there. When you have an experienced guy like Khalil Mack coming in, no matter how big you are, it's tough to stop. And it felt like, and maybe I'm overanalyzing this, maybe I'm overthinking this, but it felt like Khalil Mack was kind of getting into Tom Brady's head a little bit, because as soon as he felt pressure, he just went down. Like, he didn't want to take a hit. He didn't want to get touched. Obviously he can't scramble because he's ancient and he's not mobile, but he just went down. And you saw that kind of exchange where Khalil Mack was looking down on him and Tom Brady was just kind of looking up at him like they were, I don't know if they were saying something, if one was jawing, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And, honestly, I'm shocked that the Buccaneers didn't run more because they established the run. And Ronald Jones looked very good. I mean, if I have a knock on the defense, it's the fact that, the missed tackles. I mean, you had the one play where they called a perfect run blitz, and Roquan Smith came right into the backfield, and Ronald Jones just did a spin move and left Roquan Smith grabbing air and dust.
Yeah, that was one thing that was really frustrating early. You saw Roquan Smith missed a few tackles, and he talked about it in the post game on how he had to make the adjustments. The timing of the tackle just wasn't where it was supposed to be, and luckily it didn't end up costing him. You bring up the run by Tampa Bay, and there's something really important that I think we need to talk about in this game. This was late. When the Buccaneers kicked the field goal to go up 19-17, it wasn't a long field goal. They were well into Bears territory, as you know. It was 4th and 1. I thought to myself, I was sure that they were going to run on 4th and 1. They were just running it up the gut all night against the Bears. They were getting, chunks of yards. It felt like they could have easily decided to run there, get a first down, and essentially win the game right there. The fact that they decided to kick the field goal, I think, ended up being one of the big differences in this game.
I mean, the thing is, it's although you can run, or they were running against the Bears, that Bears defense is a very good defense, and they have a really good chance of dialing it up and shutting you down. They've stuffed a number of people. I mean, Roquan Smith, 9 times out of 10 on that run blitz, tackles Ronald Jones for a 6-yard loss. So that's the game right there. That's a loss. I think you take the points and then just imagine your defense is probably going to be able to hold them, down. And they didn't. I think most teams probably take the points. I think they went for it on. Let me pull up stats. Did they?
I know it is hindsight 2020. I get that, and in the moment, I'd probably be kicking the field goal too. I thought that the way football is kind of played, especially this year, where you see more and more going for it on 4th down. I thought they'd maybe at least try to draw them off sides. I mean, they were well in the field goal range. I just thought that again, it would have been risky, but they could have taken an opportunity to try to get another first down there, even though they were trailing. But it was big that they held them to a field goal in that situation, because that was probably the difference in the game right there.
Yeah, so the Buccaneers had gone for a 4th down already and gotten it. But honestly, their 3rd down efficiency was only 4 out of 4 and 14, or 4 out of 14. That's not a very good percentage. So I think they were just like, you know what, the Bears defense has been pretty stingy in the red zone, and they're going to bring the safety into the box, and that's probably an automatic loss there if you can't make that for a 4th down. I think if you look at it as your winning percentage, you're probably the much higher percentage. You kick the field goal and then assume the Bears offense is going to stink, which for the most part it did most of the night.
Yeah, I mean, they made a few big plays, but most of it was pretty bad, especially in the first half where Nick Foles was off, and the Bears couldn't get the run game going at all. And I think for me, the consistently worst part of the Bears game in this was the offensive line. I mean, it was bad. And losing Daniels is a really, really big loss as well. But, you saw them get beat a lot, and they could not block the run at all. The Tampa Bay was just stuffing the run, so they couldn't establish a run game. So they forced Nick Foles to throw, basically.
Yeah, I want to get to that in a minute. But the defense, going back to that, is other than that bad interception that wasn't Nick Foles' fault, that was all on Allen Robinson, and I will talk about that when we get to the offense. Other than that drive where it was a short field, the Bears kept the Buccaneers out of the end zone.
They did.
All field goals. And then when they needed to come up with a big play, what happened is you saw Fuller cause that fumble, and Robert Quinn with the heads up play scoop up the ball, and the Bears get the fumble recovery. And honestly, we're usually bitching about the officiating. This game, the Bears got some of the calls going their way.
They did.
And not all of them, but it's, I understand in the NFL officiating that there's a lot of bang plays, and, you're not always at a good angle, and there's a lot of big bodies around there. And, I get it. But when you have the ability to do instant replay, you should get those right. And I still feel like they don't. And the NFL officiating has been pretty piss poor the last couple of years. And I always feel like the Bears are on the short end of the stick, where they get a majority of the calls against them where they're close plays. And this time I felt like the Bears were either even or got ahead of them a little bit. And I was like, I'm okay with that. I know a lot of people, including the announcers, were unhappy that they threw a roughing the passer on the Buccaneers on Nick Foles. I'm like, that one wasn't really ticky-tack to me. Is the letter of the law says you can't hit him in the helmet, and they hit him in the helmet. It's clear as day. Hit him in the helmet. Like, I don't know how that is not a roughing the passer. It's the rule is you cannot make contact with the quarterback's head in the pocket. And it was clear as day he made contact with his helmet, inadvertent or not.
Well, I think, too, you look at everything that happened in the last few games where you had a pick six taken away, you had some max sacks taken away. When you saw those slew of penalties against the Buccaneers, and you know what drive I'm talking about, it was like mid-third quarter, it was just penalty. Most of that was on the Buccaneers, and Tom Brady was getting really pissed. And it's funny, you show the angle, every time there was a flag, Khalil Mack, started yelling because he just assumed it was against him.
Yeah, both teams got hit with that. What did the Tom Brady and the Bucs have, like a 3rd and 30 or something like that? And the Bears had one where they were like 20 some yards. So there was both teams had some drives where just plays, the calls did not go their way at all.
Yeah, it was a weird game with penalties. It was a very weird game.
Yeah, there was a lot of penalties, and I didn't think it was a particularly well officiated games. I can say this with any of them, but they can't figure out what's pass interference and what's not. It's just frustrating.
Yeah.
But when you got down to it, is the Bears defense made plays, and we can. I watched the game at Gary's house, and he had the projector out, projected it on his garage, and we watched in his backyard. It was actually nice. It was a little chilly, but it was nice. We had the fire, watched the Bears game. But where was I going with this? I I don't remember. Oh, I was saying that the Bears, being a Bears fan, is we have this weird like expectation on our defense and our offense that our defense has to be perfect. Like we can't allow a team to score more than 19 points, or otherwise it's a complete failure. If we give up more than 75 yards to a running back, it's a bad run defense. But then we look at our quarterback and we get the most basic middle of the road quarterback play, and we're like, oh, lock this guy up to a long-term deal, best quarterback in the history of the team, blah. It's amazing that we have, as a fan base, just have that ingrained in us that defense must be perfect or we're mad, and we have these such low expectations of quarterbacks, and it's weird.
Oh yeah, I mean that's been the Bears' MO pretty much their entire existence. So we're just thrilled to see any type of competent quarterback play, and we expect the defense to carry the team as it had in many years. And we also, we've recently witnessed a historically good Bears defense in 2018 where the turnovers were ridiculous, the numbers were beyond ridiculous, and the Bears still have a very good defense. I mean, they still have. I know a lot of people get frustrated with Chuck Pagano and this and that, and they don't take the ball away nearly as much. And, okay, it would be nice to see some more turnovers. I agree. It would be nice to see more consistent pass rush. I agree. But, man, I cannot say this defense in any way is bad. I mean, it is still a very good defense. It's one of those things where you think it's been pretty disappointing, but just go back and look at the points given up the past season and then this year. It's like, wow, you see a lot of 20 and under or 25 and under. And if we actually had a good offense, then I think that it wouldn't really matter nearly as much. I mean, if we had a good offense and we were scoring like 25 plus points a game, unlike, the Bears had the past, ever, then it wouldn't be as big of a deal that the defense wasn't winning the games for us because we wouldn't need it. So it's just, like you said, it's ingrained in our mind.
And you know what? It's that a couple of years ago when we had just so many turnovers, that's not sustainable.
No.
That is, a lot of that is luck. And a lot of it was the Bears pass rush was amazing that year. And, this year it's been, if you looked at the statistics, not the sack numbers, the sacks don't always tell the full story.
No, they don't.
But if you look, other than the Colts game, if you look at the pressures, the Bears have been really good at getting pressure with just their front four. And it just, the sack numbers haven't quite been there. But teams are starting, after that, they're changing the way they play the Chicago Bears. It's a lot more throwing to a spot, knowing where soft spots in the zone are, and a lot of quick passes, getting the ball out quick, and that's what you have to do, is that you change up the way you play against the Bears, and it shows in the stats because the Bears don't give up a lot of points. I mean, this Buccaneers team is very potent offense, and the Bears held them to one touchdown.
Yeah, exactly. It's so far what I've seen from this Bears defense. At times, to me, it looks kind of like your classic bend don't break, where the opposition is able to drive in a bit, but then once they get into their territory, they're just able to stop them. I mean, look how many times opponents have gotten into the red zone, and oftentimes they could have been touchdowns, but they've been consistently held to field goals. I mean, that speaks a lot. It doesn't look always as big when you're not scoring that much either.
Yeah, so I mean, the Buccaneers, they scored 31 on the Panthers, 28 on the Broncos, 38 on the Chargers, 19 on the Bears.
Yeah.
And 19, and they had, and that is including the Bears just being abysmal for a big chunk of the game on offense, where they just didn't have the time of possession. And it's crazy to think that the Buccaneers had the ball for as long as they did, and the Bears defense was still able to hold them down. The time of possession ended up at the end of the game getting a little more narrow, like it was 31.5 to 28.5. But there was, during that first half, man, it was just absolutely dominant in the favor of the Buccaneers.
Yep, and that's why, like we said earlier, lucky to be down only 13-0.
But the Bears did in this game get some breaks because they benefited from 109 yards of penalties on the Buccaneers, and some of that is the Bears drawing penalties, because that is an undisciplined team, and that's a hallmark of their head coach. Is he's a player's coach, he's an offensive, very smart coach, but his teams are typically very undisciplined, and the Bears did exploit that with a couple of, drawing some offsides and some false starts, and definitely with the holdings, with the pressures, but they took advantage of having a very undisciplined team. But the Bears had 66 yards and penalties on their own, so.
Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty undisciplined game on both ends.
Yeah, and again, the Bears' red zone defense, they've just been punishing teams. I think they're first in the NFL in red zone defense, and during that game, one score in the red zone, or one out of 3 in the red zone.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty good. And you've played some offenses that can put points on the board. I mean, say what you want about the Falcons, but that team can score. Say what you will about the Lions. You have a pretty good, productive quarterback in Matt Stafford, and you had Adrian Peterson. I mean, the fact that they're able to consistently keep guys out of the zone so far, it's huge. It is huge. Because one difference in play on a drive defensively from a field goal to a touchdown means everything, because the Bears have been in all these close games. They've been winning these close games, so every little bit of it counts. Every point they've scored counts, and every point they kept off the board counts.
Yeah, absolutely. So defensively, I'm very impressed. I mean, there's times that I was mad, but when you look at it, is they're relying on a very young Jalen Johnson, who I like.
I do too.
He's much more comfortable in a man to man, but he's going to be a good one, I think. And
yeah, I like him a lot.
Kyle Fuller, you see why we paid him. The defensive front, it looked very good. And, Roquan Smith, other than some missed tackles, is starting to look better and better. Danny Trevathan is looking better than he has. I think the Bears recognize his limitations and are doing their best to put him in positions of strength. You'll see on passing down, sometimes they take him out and they put in an extra safety, but things are starting to come together, and I like this Bears defense. If we can figure out the offensive situation, this might be a team to wrangle with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me see. Are there any other things to mention here? So this is the first time the Bears have been 4-1 since 2012.
Let's just hope it finishes better than that season finished.
This was the first time the Bears beat Tom Brady.
Yeah.
And it was the second time ever Tom Brady lost to an Illinois-based team. The only other time he lost to an Illinois-based team was when Jonathan Kitna and the Fighting Illini beat him when he played for Michigan.
Dang right. Dang right. You know what's funny, too? I saw this stat where, like, I don't remember exactly what it said, but, like, he had this incredible streak of Tom Brady, I should say, of not losing games. He's had leads of, like, at least 13-0 in.
That was he had never ever lost with that lead. This is the first time ever.
I also think it's the first time ever he didn't know how many downs there were.
That was hilarious. So he legitimately at the end of the game thought that fourth down breakup. I think that was DeAndre Houston Carson that broke it up.
Mm-hmm.
He legitimately thought that was third down because he was yelling that it was fourth down, that they have to go for it. I can't believe that Tom Brady was that confused in that situation. It's one thing if it's fourth down somewhere in the middle of the game, and you're like, oh man, I just kind of lost track. But in that high pressure situation, I think he had his bell rung.
I know there's a lot of controversy over whether he truly believed it was fourth down or if he was just trying to pull a fast one. I don't know. He looked like he legitimately thought it was fourth down, trying to deny it, but I don't know.
Tom Brady has never beaten Nick Foles.
Yeah, 3-0, including the Super Bowl.
So it's nice. It's nice that Tom Brady is going to finish his career and that the Bears will not be in that stat of teams that have never beaten him.
Yeah, and we have lost some really ugly games to Tom Brady. You remember the game in 2010 when it was really snowy at Soldier Field and they lost like 38-7 or something, like really bad, and the Bears were just slipping and sliding all over the place and they were down like by multiple scores by halftime. I remember that being a really ugly game. And then there was the game they gave up 50 some, and then was it Lamar Houston that tore his ACL celebrating the sack of a backup quarterback down by like 40 points?
Yeah, jumping up and down and tore his Achilles.
That was the infamous back-to-back games of 50-plus points given up against Green Bay and against New England in that awful 2014 season. And then you played that game against them at Soldier Field in 2018 where the game-tying Hail Mary came up just a yard short, but that wasn't really as ugly. That was more of a special teams losing that game. So it was finally nice to see them win one against him.
Yeah, too bad it wasn't with the Patriots, but I'll take it.
Yeah, I'll take it too, because the only time the Bears ever beat Bill Belichick was not with Tom Brady. I think that was still Drew Bledsoe.
Before we move to the offense, one quick note is the Bears had a practice squad player test positive for COVID. So, we're starting to see some outbreaks here and there, and that's no bueno because now they're at the point where the Denver Broncos, is it Broncos and Patriots? That game is being pushed till next weekend, and you're seeing Broncos players complaining on Twitter that it's messing with them, that they're practicing and it's ending up being their bye week and not actually having a bye, and they're going to have to take other teams' bye weeks and put games in their place to reconfigure who can play and who cannot because of the COVID. The Titans The Titans have had a bad outbreak, and, say what you will about the NHL and the NBA, but they really did a good job.
They did.
And especially the NHL. NHL did not have a single positive test until after the Stanley Cup was already awarded. And was it a week later?
Yeah. Yeah, it was a good week, I think.
So you saw the NHL just do it right, and the NFL is not going to go to a bubble. It's just not going to happen.
No.
But I'm reading that they are going to tomorrow meet to discuss how they want to handle this, because I think they're starting to realize that this has the potential to really get bad. We saw one team have an outbreak, and now you're having to readjust the schedule.
And it's really hard to readjust the schedule in a football season when you only have 16 games in 17 weeks.
Yep, and you have teams are gonna have to either lose their bye week, or they're gonna have to readjust their bye week, and it's it's rough. And once we start getting to the back half of the season, when certain teams have already had their bye week, what do you do?
Yeah, that's going to be a mess. Do you consider playing games on non-usual game days?
They're talking about it, but you can't play 2 games in a week.
No, you can't.
So they might have to push. I mean, don't be surprised if they have to push the playoffs back.
You think there's a chance you'll see forfeits after a while, like with the Titans situation?
I would be shocked. I think they would be more willing to if it was a team that was bad.
Yeah,
and just like,
true.
You know what, this team's bad anyway. We need to get these games in. But Tennessee's undefeated, so they're a team that really did well last year, is undefeated this year, and the NFL does not want to punish good teams. Like if it was a team that was just a bottom feeder and they're just bad and they're not making the playoffs, I think they would be much more willing to do that.
Yeah, but at the same time, I guess you ask this too. If that affects draft implications, wouldn't that be a problem as well for a bad team?
I think they just do maybe percentage, but I think that's a bridge that you cross.
Yeah.
The hope is you don't have to cancel any games, and they haven't yet. So we see where how that goes.
Yeah, we'll see.
But I want to move to the offense, and this is where we've got a lot of things to talk about. And you alluded to this earlier. The offensive line, back-to-back weeks, has been piss poor.
To put it lightly.
I mean, just straight up bad. You saw that both offensive tackles be turnstiles. Pass rush just coming right through. And then it's exacerbated now that James Daniel is lost for the year with a pectoral injury.
Yeah, that's bad.
And I like Alec Mills, but man, when he came into a
Alec Mills.
Alec Mills, Alex Bars.
Wow, he throws a no-hitter, and now he's on the Bears in the NFL. Wow,
he is the last guy I think on earth I would want to be offensive lineman for the Bears right now.
You want a Napoleon Dynamite like pitcher as a lineman?
He knows he can't block him, but he's throwing tots from his pocket. Here's some tots. Leave me alone. Here's some tots.
Freaking idiot!
God, freaking idiot! I'm not trying to block you. God.
I'll stand where I want to. Gosh.
Alex Bars came in, and he's a guy I liked. I liked him coming out of college. He ended up being undrafted because of an injury. Made the team this year. I'm like, okay, I like him, but he came into a rough situation, and just got steamrolled on a couple of runs, where just driven back right into the quarterback. So I'm hoping having some time to work with the offensive line and get a little more comfortable and not facing a team with a really good pass rush. Hopefully he can be a little better, but man, overall that this Bears offensive line has been rough.
Yeah, to say the least. It was, like I said earlier, probably their worst aspect of the game. I don't think there's really any question. I mean, that was bad. The Nagy play calling was pretty bad. So I guess take your pick.
Yeah, I mean, look at the stats offensively for the run game. They gave up on the run, and this is a game typically in a close game. At home, you're like, you can't give up on the run. This was a game I was okay giving up on the run because it was a winnable game, and the short passing was there. The run game was not. David Montgomery was the Bears' leading rusher, 10 attempts for 29 yards and a 2.9 average. Cordero Patterson ran 3 times for 7 yards, a 2.3 average. So,
and then Nick Foles had -1 rushing yards.
Yes. So you look, and as a team, they averaged 2.5 yards a carry. That just doesn't get the job done, and that's just something that you can't have. And the way you counteract that a little bit is because you can't fully give up on the run game, but we've talked about it before. Is you do the Bill Belichick, and you use your short passing game in lieu of your running game, actually handing it off, and you use your backs. And we saw that's where the Bears had some success is with David Montgomery and Cordero Patterson calling those wheel routes from the backfield. And you saw some big success on it. And I'm like, okay, that's what they need to do in times when they can't actually hand the ball off and create yardage. Those wheel routes have been fantastic, and they were huge for the Bears. I don't think they win without those couple of wheel routes that they completed.
No, they don't.
So, I mean, that's something that they're going to have to keep in their repertoire, I think, going forward.
Yeah, I mean, if it works, you got to use it. And if you're not going to be able to establish a good run, especially when your offensive line isn't looking good and you need to make something happen pretty quickly, you got to do what you got to do. And that worked out very well.
But one thing the Bears need to do is they need to work on the screen pass. They are so bad at it. And with having a bad offensive line, there's going to be times when the defenses are just going to pin their ears back and come in, and you got to have a way to slow that down, and having them fear a legitimate screen pass is one way you do that. So you need to be able to develop that, and the Bears have been bad at it. And I think they always try to do it with David Montgomery. I think Jimmy Graham might be a better option. He's an easier target to hit, and I just think it might be easier in line to have a bigger guy, easier target, and let him go, or Cordero Patterson, who's also a bigger guy. I just to try to get something going, because their ability to run a screen pass has just been abysmal under Matt Nagy. And I don't know if they don't work on it enough. I don't know if they tip the play, because no team are ever fooled by it.
No, I mean, the opposition reads it like a book.
Yeah, they know, and it just gets snuffed out, and they end up losing yards usually. And where other teams, you saw Tom Brady have one for big chunk of yards. I think it was a Gronk one, and you need to be able to get that working. You have to.
Yeah, what really annoyed me was They were coming out in the second half, and they had the ball to start. They had just flipped the script like in the blink of an eye. They were down 13-0. Boom, touchdown. Boom, Kyle Fuller play. Boom, one-handed Jimmy Graham catch for a touchdown. They're up 14-13. And, I'm thinking, okay, keep this good mojo going. Keep it going. You have a whole other half to play. Tom Brady's not just going to wither away and die, even at his old age. You got to get something going in terms of getting off to a good start, because you don't want to give confidence right back to the Buccaneers and Tom Brady. And then they come out with a couple of lame screen passes, and then they punted the ball right away. And it drove me nuts. I mean, why aren't you driving forward? What is with the play calling? It really drove me nuts.
Yeah, I screamed about that. The two drives after halftime. I'm watching the Minnesota Seattle game right now, and on third down, the Vikings threw a nice little screen pass for 9 yards and got the first down. Mike, there we go. And the Bears can't do that at all.
No.
But the Bears, you're right, had the momentum going in, and they had the ball coming out of halftime. They got the ball, and you're like, okay, let's put the pressure on, because if you want to win this game, I kept screaming, it's like, you need to score some touchdowns. Mm-hmm. You need to, because Tom Brady is, if he's in striking distance, he's lethal still, even though he's 400 years old. But Matt Nagy's play calling was just terrible. You come out and you have not just one, but back-to-back terrible lame duck drives, and it was absolutely infuriating.
It was. I'm just like, what are you thinking here? Why are you playing conservative John Fox bullshit to lose, or to play not to lose? The other thing that drove me crazy is, I'm sure you remember this play too. I believe the yardage was, and this was later in the game, it was 2nd and like 27 or something, or 17. It was second and very long. And he just kind of small run with Montgomery. Like, not trying to eat up a big chunkage of yards when you know your running game wasn't particularly good, because they were being stuffed all game. I just didn't get what he was thinking there. There are times where I feel like he's afraid to just try to move the ball forward.
Yeah, I mean, to be more specific about those opening drives we both were bitching about. So the Bears took the lead going into the half on the Jimmy Graham touchdown, which was a fantastic catch. When they threw that ball, I don't know if it was because it was being projected on a garage, but I was just like, I thought that was intercepted. And I was like screaming, and I was like, damn it. Whoa. And then I'm like, wait, Jimmy Graham caught that? How did he catch that? And it was, he warded the guy off with the one hand and caught it in the bicep of the other one. I was like, that was awesome. And you're like, okay, the Bears got this momentum. And, the Bears have been pretty good at having halftime adjustments coming out. And you're like, okay, I like this. Matt Nagy's going to come out, and we're going to, if we can come out and score a touchdown in this one, suddenly we start putting the pressure on Minnesota. And my hope was we get away from them running the ball, force them to be a passing team, and maybe we can do some damage. Like, there we go. And they come out from a shotgun. Foles throws it to David Montgomery for no gain on first down. Then throws a short pass to Allen Robinson for no gain. And there's a penalty on Cole Kmet, which was our one Cole Kmet sighting this game.
Yeah, the one sighting in the game was a penalty.
Yeah, so Cole Kmet did not get a target this game, but he got a holding call. So that backed them up to 2nd and 20. So then he has a short pass to Allen Robinson for a 3-yard. So then it's 3rd and 17. And then he throws a 9-yard pass to Anthony Miller, and they punt. So that was, with 2nd and 20, with the way this offense is going, you're not going to pick up a 3rd and 20. I don't know why you don't try to pick up 10 to 12 yards on that second down and make it a 3rd down and something you can actually get,
Yeah.
And then you come out with that second drive of the half. And this is after you're down now because the Buccaneers came in and kicked a field goal. So they're up 16-14. Then David Montgomery on first down for 1 yard. Nick Foles gets sacked. You lose 9 yards. So then it's 3rd and 18. And Nick Foles incomplete dump off pass to David Montgomery. And there was a holding on Bobby Massey, which they declined. So then you end up at 4th and 18. And Pat O'Donnell has a 43-yard punt. So you're just like, that is the kind of play calling you drives you crazy.
Yep. Okay, Sean. I want to talk to you about a play that everybody has been talking about. This has to do with Matt Nagy. I'm confident you know which play I'm about to mention.
I'm going to guess that this is the incomplete throw on 2nd and 9 with 1:28 left to Allen Robinson.
Correct.
So here's 2 reasons that was dumb. Is you're trying to run out the clock. That's a 50-50 ball. Anyway, so that's bad. You want if you're going to throw, you want high completion percentage passes. Number 2, if he does come down with that, he's going out of bounds. You're stopping the clock anyway.
Yeah.
So if you're going to call up, I'm okay. There's a lot of people that are just like, you got to run it. The Bears have not been able to run it.
No.
I'm fine with them passing, but it needs to be high completion percentage passes because I totally get it that with the Bears kicking game, do you want to attempt a 47-yard field goal for the win?
Yeah, that's why I wanted to bring this play up, and your thoughts have pretty much reflected mine. I didn't like that throw itself. I did not. But I understand not wanting to just keep it on the ground when you're not going anywhere and wanting to get as close as possible to make it easier on your kicker, who is still indeed technically your backup kicker, even though your main kicker hasn't kicked one kick all season yet because of injury. I get it. You want to move as close as you can. I do. There is a good reason to want to move as close as you can in this situation. But like you said, the selection wasn't smart. 50-50 ball going towards the sideline. Now, had Robinson caught it, like you said, if he goes out of bounds, the clock stops. That's not great. At least it would have been a first down, and you could still milk some clock after that. But best case scenario right there would have been a much more likely play to be completed and stay in bounds. Something a bit more in the middle of the field and not really somewhere that could be picked, obviously. It didn't end up costing the Bears, but I know in the moment all of us were worried that it was going to, because when they kicked the field goal, there was over a minute left. There was plenty of time. Buck and Aikman were saying how there was plenty of time. So, it's a good thing that did not cost them, because that was a very, very big moment in the game. But like you said, and like I said, I completely understand wanting to get as much yardage as you can when you don't really trust your kicker. To Cairo Santos' credit, though, he made all his kicks again, including the game winner. He made, a 46-yarder in the game. So, give some hats off to him. But oh man, it's one of those plays that would have been completely would have been looked at much more differently had the Bears lost that game. Because now we just look back at it and say, it was dumb, but it didn't cost us. If it did cost us, that's the only thing we'd be talking about in this game.
Absolutely. You're right. Everything is, I get it, is at the point where they have it as it was, so it was 1st and 10 at the Tampa Bay 25. So from right there, you're looking at like 43-yard field goal. And are you comfortable as a Bears fan with a 43-yard field goal?
Never. Not since 2018.
Nope. And so I'm not comfortable with that. So the Bears have 1st and 10, minute 36 left. I think they have all of their timeouts, maybe only 2 timeouts, but they've got timeouts if they need it. They run to the right with David Montgomery for 1 yard. And that's where I thought the drive started with the bad play calling. I mean,
yeah.
it took some luck and things to be able to get down there, but I thought that was a bad call right there.
I agree.
Tampa Bay calls a timeout with 1:28 left. Nick Foles then throws that pass to the deep right, and I'm fine. I thought if you're going to go with something, that you should be going something in the middle of the field, and they didn't. So like you don't need to pick up a ton of yards because you pick up 10 yards and suddenly then it's a chip shot.
Yeah.
At 33 yards. But they throw that 50-50 ball and the clock's going to stop anyway. And you're like, what the hell? And then you got 3rd and 9 and you throw this 4-yard pass to Allen Robinson and you're at the Tampa Bay, basically the 24. So, it's you end up kicking a 38-yard field goal. I'm sorry, you're at the 20, so you kick a 38-yard field goal, and I think that's about the extent of where you're comfortable kicking the ball anymore.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, with Eddie Pinheiro, obviously it's a little different. Now, even with Eddie Pinheiro doing overall good last year, maybe it's just the fear in us, I still wouldn't feel as comfortable at that distance.
I don't care who's kicking in the Bears uniform. I couldn't watch that kick. I turned around. I told Gary, I was like, let me know how it looks because I can't watch this. I can't.
I know.
And so they ended up making it and gave Tom Brady got the ball back with a minute 13 left. And had they been smarter on it and kept the clock running, not necessarily running it, I'm okay with them passing it, but it had to be safe passes. And all I really wanted at that point was to just chip away at the yards, make it a closer field goal attempt. And had they just kept the clock going, Tom Brady probably would have had something along the lines of 38 seconds left and no timeouts.
Yeah.
And that suddenly is a much tougher situation to go down and kick a field goal as opposed to a minute 13.
Oh, no question. No question. But hey, after all that, give that defense one last pat on the back because they didn't even let them drive into the red zone. It wasn't like down to the last throw into the end zone. Stopped them cold.
Yeah, it was nice. I mean, that last drive on Tampa, I was so nervous. I was like, this is plenty of time for them to go down and kick a field goal and win this game. And I'm like, do you take this as a moral? I was basically in my head going, do you take this as a moral victory that a team that everybody assumed was going to blow you out of the water, that you only lost by 2 points, or what? And then you're like, and especially after that first play, they complete a 12-yard pass to Mike Evans, and you're like, here it comes. So they only took 7 seconds off the clock, and they're at the 37-yard line already. And then incomplete pass, and you're like, okay, all right, incomplete pass. And then 4-yard pass, and that's where the clock starts running.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, all right, down to 42 seconds, incomplete pass to Gronkowski, clock stops, and you're like, okay, it's 4th and 6. There's only 33 seconds left. They're at the 41. Realistically, they probably have to get to another like 30 yards. You're like, okay, can they do this? And they throw a deep pass, and DeAndre Houston Carson breaks that up. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And that was a play where they brought in another safety instead of having a linebacker, because that was the tight end that was up too. And typically you'll have in past years you would have had probably a linebacker there, but instead you had a safety, and it worked out in the Bears' favor because you got the pass breakup.
Honestly, when DeAndre Houston Carson broke that pass up so cleanly, so beautifully, and it was right on the edge of field goal range. When he broke that up, I was just waiting for a flag. I was just waiting for it.
Looked everywhere for it.
And, you hear Joe Buck say, there are no flags. And it's like, oh my God, we just won.
Yep. It's always nice to end it on offense. You're just like, victory formation.
Oh, it's the best.
Yeah. It felt so good. But I can see, I got some more stats here. Did you know that Bobby Massey has more touches of a live ball this season than Cole Kmet?
I'm actually not surprised.
Jimmy Graham's 4 touchdowns ties Martellus Bennett for most among Bears tight ends through week 5. So we already have more production from the tight end position than we did all of last year.
That's sad.
By a lot.
That's sad.
And yeah, Bobby Massey has touched a live ball more than Cole Kmet this season. Bobby Massey has 1 reception and a fumble recovery. Cole Kmet has 1 pass reception.
And it's been 5 games.
And Jimmy Graham, he's tied for the second most touchdowns in the NFL among tight ends with Baltimore's Mark Andrews and behind Green Bay's Robert Tonyan.
Hey, you know what? So far, Jimmy Graham has proved me wrong. I'm glad to see it.
You know what? I tweeted that out. My apologies, because he has been very valuable. And we're going to talk here about Cole Kmet. They've raved about him in training camp and talked about how ready he is for the NFL. And the Notre Dame is like historically known as having players ready to play in the NFL, an NFL ready system. And he is not getting targets.
No.
And I'm looking at the number of snaps, and he's actually gotten snaps. So here's the tight end snaps for the game. Jimmy Graham, 48 snaps. Demetrius Harris, 28. Cole Kmet, 21. J.P. Holtz, 5. So Demetrius Harris is getting basically the snaps and the targets that Cole Kmet should be getting. And I want to know why. I don't understand. Somebody could talk about that. It's not like Demetrius Harris is getting a ton of targets, but why is Cole Kmet getting none? None, 0. What's going on?
Yeah, he ain't getting a lot of targets, but he is. Demetrius Harris isn't, but when it's more than Cole Kmet that really speaks volumes.
Yeah, I mean, Demetrius Harris has 7 more snaps than Cole Kmet, and Cole Kmet has had 0 targets. 0. And, as a whole, I don't understand. We heard from Matt Nagy, and we know that from this style of offensive play calling and the offensive tree from Andy Reid, how important the tight end position is.
Mm-hmm.
You see, you have an elite tight end in Travis Kelce with the Kansas City Chiefs, and with the Philadelphia Eagles, you've had Zach Ertz, and now you're sort of passing that torch over to Dallas Goedert. So you see like these tight ends and how important they are. And when the Eagles were a very good team, you saw how important Zach Ertz was to that team. And I forget the guy's name that was before Zach Ertz, but they've had a longstanding string of tight ends. And Matt Nagy talked about how the offense couldn't function as well without the tight end position being, ironed out. And you go out and you spend a 2nd round pick, your first pick in the draft, to get Cole Kmet. You sign Demetrius Harris as your, from free agency. And you had 13 tight ends at one point. And you weeded it down to the guys you kept on your roster. And you signed Jimmy Graham. And you're like, okay, well, I've completely overhauled this. Now I should be able to run this offense. And you're still not targeting the tight ends. Cole Kmet got 0 targets. Demetrius Harris got 1. Jimmy Graham got 5. So Graham had 33 yards and receptions. Harris had 9. And Jimmy Graham got the touchdown, which I'm glad that they're targeting him in the red zone because he should be a red zone target. But why aren't we utilizing them more in some of these drives, especially considering that we're losing confidence in Anthony Miller and Javon Wims.
Yeah, I mean, give the kid a chance, for goodness sake. You drafted him so high, why aren't you? There's really no good reason not to.
The Bears wide receiver situation is, I thought we were going to be in a good spot coming into the season. Not like we have the best wide receivers in the world, but you felt pretty comfortable. And Allen Robinson has been good, but not great. There's too many times where he's gotten the ball taken away from him. I hate that thing where he jumps up with both feet and tries to take the ball in that way, because that's what caused the interception. Is he knocked the ball with his knee into the air and it got intercepted. It should have been a completion or an incomplete pass. It's
been a truly weird year for him.
It's hard to say you want to pay this guy when, he is your best receiver, but he's not good enough. He's not Mike Evans. He's clearly a very good wide receiver, but I'm turning the corner on him, and I'm starting to think can you do better? And you're seeing the Bears shift their confidence in these players, because Anthony Miller. So here's the wide receiver snap counts. Allen Robinson got 55 snaps, which, not surprising. Darnell Mooney got 41. Anthony Miller got 26. Javon Wims 17, and Ted Ginn got 4. So you're seeing Anthony Miller losing snaps and Darnell Mooney getting them, and Darnell Mooney is honestly earning them. I like what he's bringing to this team. He's a guy who I loved in college, thought he was fantastic, and I was optimistic about the Bears picking him, but I thought he would be a kind of a project guy, because he's so slender, but he's got the speed, the hands, the ability to jump. I just thought he was too frail and thin framed to be able to make an impact. But I thought he would have to get bigger and stronger and put on a little weight and some muscle to make it. And he's proving that no, he can do it with that speed and height. I still think he needs to put on a little weight, and put on some muscle, but the kid can play. And Anthony Miller is a guy who we were expecting big things of, and he has just been, fading.
Wildly inconsistent.
Yeah. He was four targets, 4 catches for 28 yards. But Mooney got more targets, and Allen Robinson just got a ton of targets. And this is part of the problem with the offense is you look at the pass targets and 16 to Allen Robinson, and then the next person is David Montgomery with 8. And you should see another you should see a bigger distribution to guys. It shouldn't be targeting Allen Robinson so much. And 2, you should be spreading it out more. 3, your tight ends should be getting more targets in this offense. And so I don't know what's happening here.
I don't either. I don't think anybody does. And a lot of us are waiting for that to change, but we've been waiting for a lot of things to change on the offense that has not changed yet. So I can't sit here and optimistically say that we're going to see Cole Kmet suddenly get a bunch of targets.
Yeah, I'm not expecting that. And I'm hoping, though, that we start to see Cole Kmet get worked into this. Would be nice. And by the end of the year, getting a lot of, all of the Demetrius Harris type targets and take away some of Jimmy Graham. But we're not seeing that as of right now.
No.
Man, I'm showing the quarterback class of 2012. Andrew Luck, RG3, Ryan Tannehill, and then Brock Osweiler. And then you look way down there and it's Nick Foles and Russell Wilson and Kirk Cousins. And those are the guys that are left. All the other guys backups are gone.
And 2 of them have Super Bowls, have started and won Super Bowls.
But yeah, this offense is just been brutal. And I think my favorite moment, other than scoring opportunities and winning, was on the sideline. Or there was a time when the Bears were moving the ball and they had the Buccaneers defense on their heels, and Nick Foles was trying to run a hurry up, and Matt Nagy had them slow it down and then go back into a huddle instead of being a no huddle, and swapped out some personnel. And then the drive stalled as soon as they went into, they changed personnel and went into a huddle. It gave the Buccaneers an opportunity to regroup, and they made the stop, and boom, the drive is over. And you saw Nick Foles give Matt Nagy the business on the sideline.
Yeah, that was great. And a lot of people were talking about that too, because that's a sign of at least a quarterback that knows what he's doing and has an idea of what he's doing. And we haven't really seen that much out of Bears quarterbacks. So, if you want to look for some immediate value in Nick Foles, that right there to me is.
I hope it starts to be where Matt Nagy goes, you know what? This guy does understand the system, and I'm going to have to trust him, because you looked at those two going at it, and you saw Mitch Trubisky come up and just stick his face in there, and just like, if you screen capture it, he just looks confused, like he doesn't know what they're talking about. And the hope is you're like, okay, well, Matt has been spoon feeding Mitch Trubisky, and Mitch just doesn't get it. And now suddenly you've got a guy who actually understands the system. And sure, is Nick Foles the guy that's going to lead you to the promised land for a long term? No, he's not an elite quarterback, but he's a quarterback that has been around, knows the system, and has played at an elite level at times. So
yes.
So you have to start trusting him a lot more, and Nagy needs to listen to him and trust that he's going to understand what's going on and let him take control of this offense a little bit, because sometimes Matt Nagy just gets very conservative and it drives me up a wall.
Yeah, it drives me up a wall too, and I think a lot of people would agree with that. We don't want to see more John Fox bullcrap.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we can't have another performance where our offense gets less than 250 total yards.
No, you can't sustain success like that.
Yeah, you can't. You got to score some points. You got to sustain some drives. And you can't have another game where you rush for 35 yards and win.
No.
But quick thing, who do you think led the Bears in tackles in this game?
I have no idea. I'm gonna guess. Kyle Fuller? No.
Danny Trevathan.
Danny Trevathan. Okay.
He led the team with 8 tackles.
Okay.
7 solo. Roquan Smith had 7. Kyle Fuller had 6. Sean Gibson had 4. So I was like, man, nice. And you even saw James Vaughters get involved. He had a sack. I liked that. You're actually seeing some decent things out of James Vaughters and Barkevious Mingo,
I was just going to mention him,
who has been a bust. And I wouldn't say that he's a world beater with the Bears, but he's been a nice rotational piece for them.
Yeah, he's done good enough to be in there, and he's made some plays, and he's been able to do what he's asked of.
Yeah, so for that small investment, he's getting the veteran minimum.
Yeah.
So kudos to him. So the nice thing is the Bears, they get a mini bye here because they played 2 games in like 100 hours. So their next game is not until the 18th, so a week from today, and they're going to be playing the Carolina Panthers.
Now, that's a game where you look at the matchup and you think, yeah, the Bears should win that one. But, I'll be honest, that's a game where I feel like that might be the game where the Bears are favored and they just kind of poop the bed and lose.
Because, yeah, you look at it and you've got, right after that, you've got the Rams game and then the Saints game and then the Titans game. And
it feels like a total trap game.
Yeah, you're looking forward because, listen to this string of games you've got in a row. The Rams, the Saints, the Titans, the Vikings, the Packers. So the Rams, Saints, Titans, Vikings, Packers. So that's your schedule until December after the Panthers game. So yeah. You're looking and you're like, man, that's a tough string. We're gonna sustain some losses in there. So you look at it as almost, I hate to say this, it's almost like a must win against the Panthers.
I mean, it kind of is.
Because if you go into that game, or if you go into the Rams game with a 5-1 record, you're feeling pretty confident. You're like, okay, we can sustain some losses here. I don't think other than the Packers game, I think you could win those games, but they're going to be tough. The Rams are just putting up points. The Saints Drew Brees looks like age is starting to catch up with him.
Yeah, they don't look completely unbeatable. I'm not saying they're bad, but they look beatable.
Yeah, they've had some games where you're just like, man, Drew Brees does not look good. The Titans,
And that defense has been bad too.
yeah, the Titans are a tough team, but they don't put up a ton of points. So you feel like, all right, maybe we could eke that game out. The Vikings, you've dominated for the last couple years. So do I? I mean, if you're asking me to put money on them, I'm not putting money on those games. But they're games that the Bears at least have a shot to win.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the Panthers is going to be, I think, the key, because you're not going to win. You're not going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-0 against the Rams, Saints, Titans, Vikings, and Packers.
No.
So you need to come out there and actually beat the Panthers, because they're without. When does McCaffrey come back? Let's see. When is he supposed to come back? I think that he's eligible to return against the Bears. But they said that timetable is a 4 to 6 week injury. And I think it was at week 3 that it happened, or week 2. So he's probably not going to come back against the Bears, I'm guessing. So that's good. But you're starting to see Teddy Bridgewater heat up. And I think he's had consecutive 300-yard passing games. So
yeah, he's looked decent. Yeah.
He's looked decent, and the defense has been pretty decent. So it's a game where the Bears are actually going to have to play to win. It's not going to be a rollover and gimme.
No,
not
at all.
Like the Jets or something. Like
No.
the Panthers are a better team than I thought they would be at this point, but still, you need to go out there and actually win that game, because I think 5-1, and because then you can, if you can split those next several games, or even go 2-3, you're still at a winning record and going into the last part of your season where you've got Lions, Texans, Vikings, Jaguars, and you feel a lot more confident to pick up those wins.
Yeah, exactly.
So, looking at that is, I think we're gonna learn a lot about this team Sunday against the Carolina Panthers, I think.
Yeah, we'll see how they come out in a game where they should win, but it's not going to be a cakewalk, and see what they do after some rest and maybe trying to make some adjustments offensively. So yeah, absolutely. This stretch is going to be vital for the Bears.
And I think it's going to be the first time this season the Bears have played in front of like a decent number of fans, because Carolina is going to have in-person attendance.
Yeah, I mean, Bears haven't had fans. The Lions didn't have fans. And the Falcons just had like family members in the stands.
Yeah, so this will actually have real crowd. So it'll be sort of like a real road game. So
yeah,
we'll see how the Bears are able to handle that.
Absolutely.
So where do you want to go to next? There's not a ton of baseball news, but we do have some hockey here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Blackhawks, there's a lot to talk about here.
So I guess, first of all, Corey Crawford will not be returning to the Chicago Blackhawks.
He is now a member of the New Jersey Devils. So the longtime Blackhawk, who was drafted in 2003, is no more. 2-time Stanley Cup winner, multi-time Jennings Trophy winner. Corey Crawford was upset. He was devastated. Literally used the word devastated that the Blackhawks were not going to re-sign him. And Jonathan Toews is also not happy with the way things have developed. Now, Corey Crawford was, looking to, get well-deserved paid. Got a 2-year deal from the Devils. I believe it was a 2-year deal.
Mm-hmm.
And the Blackhawks are thinking, we're going to go into transition. We're going to try to develop goaltending in-house. They extended Malcolm Subban, who really does not have a lot of experience, and they just had the NHL draft, and they did draft a goaltender with their second pick, so they're obviously going to try to draft some prospects as they have and develop those. So those aren't going to be around for a while, and I thought they would have to go out and get a veteran goaltender, but I really think they're just going to go with what they have. And that right there was the first indicator to me that they are entering a transition process.
Here's my thoughts on things.
Mm-hmm.
Is you have very limited financial cap space for this team.
Barely any, yeah.
You had guys that you needed to sign.
Kubalik being one of them.
Kubalik being the number one. And Corey Crawford was, from what I understand, asking the Blackhawks for somewhere between $5 and $6 million a year.
That's what the report said.
And they were offering him much less than that. I'm going to guess they were offering him between 2 and 3, which I see why he wouldn't want that, but he has to understand the reality of the situation, and that if he wanted to stay with this team, he was going to have to offer up a hometown discount, because if they would have paid him the contract that the Devils gave him, then you know what? They're not going to be able to re-sign Kubalik. They're going to have to sign much cheaper guys, and it's going to be a tough road for him to travel. And the Blackhawks team is not going to be in a good place.
No, and look, I want to make something very, very clear. I'm fine taking a rebuild approach. It's not going to be your typical rebuild, because it's not going to be a fire sale. Your core guys are under big contracts with no trade clauses, so you're not going to sell everybody and everyone. But, I'm okay with going about this big transition. What worries me, or what I should say I would rather it be like, is if we went through this with new minds at the helm.
Agreed fully. Is Stan Bowman should not be leading this rebuild. He should be gone. We should have a new head coach. We should have a new general manager. And if we're rebuilding, leave somebody else to rebuild, because the history of Stan Bowman is actually pretty bad. Let me read you the history of Stan Bowman trades. Let's see. Traded Cam Barker for Kim Johnson and Nick Leddy. That was actually a good one.
Yeah, Nick Leddy was pretty good.
I'm trying to look at ones that actually mattered here.
Fun fact, I was at Kim Janssen's first game as a Blackhawk, and one of his very few. Just saying.
He traded Chris Versteeg for Victor Stahlberg.
That was kind of a wash, because Versteeg eventually came back and won a cup with you in 2015. Stahlberg won a cup with you in 2013. I kind of see that as a wash.
He traded Dustin Byfuglien, Ben Eager, Brent Sopel for draft picks, essentially.
That was purely a cap move, and that was after 2010, and that just had to be done.
They traded their first-round pick to the Islanders for their second-round pick, and for 2 second-round picks. He traded a second-round pick for Jimmy Hayes.
Yawn.
Let's see. Traded draft picks. Traded Andrew Ladd for Ivan Vishnevsky and a second-round pick.
That was another cap move.
which ended up being Adam Clendenning, who never made it to the bigs for more than a cup of coffee.
Saw him plenty of times in Rockford.
Yeah, I saw him tons of times. I've talked to him. Very nice guy.
Yeah.
Let's see. Traded Jack Skilly and Hugh Jessamine, David Pecan for Michael Frolik and Alexander Salik.
That was a great trade.
that
Remember what
was a good
Michael
one.
Frolik did in those playoff runs?
Traded Troy Brower for a draft pick.
I think, again, that was another cap move.
Traded Brian Campbell for Rostislav Olevs. Traded Thomas Kopecky for a 7th round pick. Traded the 7th round pick they got for Kopecky for the rights to Steve Montador.
Didn't Steve Montador pass away?
Yeah, I believe he committed suicide.
Oh, really sad. I remember him, though.
Here's one where they actually won. They traded a 2nd and 3rd rounder for Johnny Oduya.
That ended up being a pretty good trade.
Traded John Scott for a draft pick, which ended up being Travis Brown.
That's a wash.
Draft picks. They traded a 4th round pick for Michael Hanzus.
Hey, he was part of some cup runs, so in 2013, I'll take that.
Traded Dave Boland for a 2nd and a 4th.
That was a cap move, if I remember correctly.
The draft picks ended up being Carl Dahlstrom and Robin Norrell.
Meh.
They traded Michael Frolik for draft picks.
Cap move.
They traded Dan Carcillo for a draft pick. Traded Jimmy Hayes for Chris Versteeg in 2013.
That worked out fine.
Man,
Won another cup with us.
some of these are nobody. Traded Brandon Peary for a 3rd round pick.
I mean, he never really saw the NHL much.
Traded a 2nd round pick for David Rundblad.
Hey, that was a good trade because I like that name. Because I like to call him Run Bad when things didn't go so well.
Traded draft picks for the rights to draft Nick Schmaltz. Traded Brandon Bolig for a draft pick.
The fact that they got a draft pick for Bolig and not just a bucket of balls is a miracle, so I'll count that one as a win.
They traded Nick Leddy and Kent Simpson for Vili Polka, who I have a game-worn autographed jersey from.
Hey, that's a win for you, right?
And my daughter got to meet him, and it's funny. She is smiling like the biggest smile I've ever seen in my life as he's handing her the jersey. Like, he took it off and handed it to her, and it smelled so bad trying to drive home from Rockford with this jersey.
Ugh.
And
I think you've told me that story, yeah.
And it was like a blind auction. So it was like they were wearing these pink Rockford Ice Hogs jerseys for breast cancer awareness. And it was like, oh, the silent auction. So you just kind of put what your max bid is in a box for, there's a box for each player. And you just put it in there. I was like, all right, I put in for Vili Polka, and I forgot who else. I put one other person, and I put in a bid, I think, of like $25 over the minimum, which was like $250. I think I put $275, and I won Vili Polka, and I was like, okay. So I was like, they called my name on the intercom at the game, and so I walked down there, and I was like, and so I had to pay with my credit card, and I was like, what, do you mail it to me? They're like, no, you go down to the locker room, and you meet the player, and they sign it and hand it over to you. I'm like, oh. So we go down there, and my daughter is a pig in shit. She's just so happy. And this jersey just stunk so bad. I'm like, I can't wash it because it's got an autograph on it. So I'm like Googling, like, what do you do? And somebody's like, oh, put it in the freezer. Like, okay. So I put it in the freezer and it doesn't stink anymore.
Yeah, it kills the bacteria.
Yeah. So then he also gave me the socks too. So I have those.
That's cool.
Yeah. So it's like a neon pink jersey. But I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I got to write it off my taxes too. So that was a win. So I like Vili Poca, even though I think he's playing in the KHL now.
Probably.
Traded Jeremy Morin for Tim Erickson.
Meh.
Traded Adam Clendenning for Gustav Forsling.
Meh.
Traded TJ Brennan for Spencer Abbott.
Meh.
Acquired Kimo Timonen for a second-round draft pick.
Hey, want a cup with us?
Yeah, but that was not worth a second-round draft pick for that guy.
No, it wasn't. But at least they got a cup out of it.
They traded Klaus Dahlbuck and a first-round pick for Antoine Vermette.
That was a very much-needed trade and a good one that was key to a Stanley Cup.
Traded. They got Adam Desjardins from San Jose for Ben Smith and a draft pick.
Again, part of a Stanley Cup.
Acquired Ryan Haggerty for Antti Ranta.
Yeah, there was really no room for Ranta at the time.
Traded Artem Anisimov, Jeremy Morin, Corey Tropp, and Marco Dano, and a fourth-round pick for Brandon Saad and Alex Broadhurst and Mike Paliotta.
I hated that trade so much when they did it. I just loathed it.
Yeah. Traded Liam Coughlin for Anders Nilsson.
Meh.
They acquired Trevor Daley and Ryan Garbett for Patrick Sharp and Stephen Johns.
That was cap. It was sad, but it was cap.
They acquired Dennis Robertson and Jake Massey in a fifth-round pick for Chris Versteeg and Joakim Nordstrom in a third-round pick. Traded Rob Scuderi. Swapped Rob Scuderi for Trevor Daley.
Good old Rob Scuderi.
Trevor Daley went on to help them help Pittsburgh win a Stanley Cup.
Yes, I remember.
Richard Panik for Jeremy Morin.
Remember when Richard Panik had that really nice stretch for the Blackhawks?
He did, and that was short-lived.
It was short-lived, but it was fun while it lasted.
They traded a first and a third for Andrew Ladd.
I love Andrew Ladd. He did well. It just sucked that they had to give up that much for a rental.
They got Dale Weiss and Thomas Fleischman for Philip Deneau and a second-round pick.
That was a nice trade.
Let's see. They got a second-round pick and a third-round pick for Teuvo Teravainen and Brian Bickle. Yeah. They got Alex DeBrincat and Chad Chris for Andrew Shaw. They traded a third-round pick for Thomas Yurko.
I forgot he was a thing.
Scott Darling for a 3rd-round pick.
Think that was another cap move.
Traded Nick Jalmerson for Connor Murphy.
Again, that was a cap move. I like Connor Murphy, but he's no hammer.
Artemi Panarin, Brandon Saad. Man, this Marcus Kruger for future considerations.
Most of these trades have just been very minor moves with the occasional big one.
It's
especially the past few years.
But I mean, you look and none of these are really helping, and some of them are just getting rid of bad contracts that Stan gave out.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing, are those albatross contracts that are handcuffing them.
And you know, it sort of leads to the from yesterday, we traded Brandon Saad for a defenseman who is a meh defenseman.
Yeah, he's okay at best. You didn't get any prospects. You didn't get any draft picks. And really the next year you're only saving about less than $2 million in the cap with what you're picking up and what you're keeping.
Yeah, so it's not much. So you're retaining $1 million of Saad's salary, and then I think there was, so you're like a $2 million difference. So you're saving like $2 million by trading Saad. I don't understand why you do that.
This is Ned Flanders desperately selling off his stuff in the episode when Ned Flanders failed.
When he has the leftorium? Yeah. It's why I don't understand is this is not a defenseman who is going to help you, I don't think. So I just don't understand this move, and I don't really understand what the hell Stan Bowman does. It's frustrating.
The league has passed the Blackhawks by. Their philosophy, their play style, everything. They have enough talent to compete. They don't have enough talent to be legitimate cup contenders. Like I said, I'm glad we're doing kind of a reset here as best we can, but I just really wish someone else was at the helm here.
It would be nice. It would be nice. Yeah, here's the trades. Brandon Saad for Artem Anisimov. Artemi Panarin for Brandon Saad. Brandon Saad for Nikita Zadorov. How do you get the worst player 3 out of 3 times?
Yeah, and I mean, look, I like Brandon Saad. I think he's a very solid player. I'm not as down on that Saad-Panarin trade as other people are, and I liked Artem Anisimov as well. I thought he was a very good player for the Blackhawks, but it's just frustrating. You have to keep going through this cycle here just to save a few pennies.
It's just really frustrating. And honestly, all Stan is doing is treading quicksand. He's in a quicksand pit, just treading. And he's not sinking and drowning, but he's definitely not getting out of it.
He's like halfway in, and he's got that Stan Bowman straight face look on his face.
This team is middling. And honestly, I love Jonathan Toews and I love Patrick Kane, but they have zero right to complain about what's happening with this team because they got their giant contracts, and I'm going to say neither one of them is living up to that giant contract. Is if you are getting that giant salary, you better earn that giant salary because you're eating up cap that other people could be using. Jonathan Toews is bitching that they got rid of Corey Crawford, but guess what? Jonathan Taves' contract is part of the reason that they don't have Corey Crawford. Is I don't see Jonathan Taves giving over some of his money to help pay him. So, you can't have it both ways. If you're not living up to your contract and this team is not winning games, like what do you expect? You've got to do something. You're up against the salary cap. You've got to sign some of these young guys, and it's just a rough place to be in. And Stan Bowman there's a lot of reasons to be mad at Stan Bowman, but getting rid of Corey Crawford is not the reason to get mad at him. And sure, we're looking at right now with a dog shit goalie situation. We have Colin Delia and Malcolm Subban.
Yep, that's your options right now.
So, I mean, I'm not happy about that, but I'm also just because you're not happy about that doesn't mean you pay Corey Crawford a butt ton of money, because that's not helping you in the long term either. And he, I was texting with my friend Brad the other day, and honestly, we might not know if Malcolm Subban's a good goalie or not, because he is just going to be under fire with a bad defense in front of him, and he's going to be in a position to fail. He's being put in a position to fail no matter what.
Yeah, it's not an easy situation for him. The one thing I'll say is, we were talking about the contracts with Kane and Taves. The one spot where I'll disagree with a little bit is, I think Taves has played well enough to his contract, and Kane has been one of the best players in the league. So I don't think that that's an issue with me per se. If you want to talk about Seabrook, then yeah, that contract was just stupid to begin with.
I'm not saying those guys are playing bad. Those two guys are getting between the two of them, a huge chunk of the salary cap.
They are.
And they should be playing at an elite level.
Well, I think Kane is elite. I do.
But it's not. He's scoring goals that he's not helping the team win.
I don't know. I'm going to disagree with you there. Kane is the cornerstone of this franchise. Look at Taves in the playoffs. He was a monster in the playoffs. Kane didn't do much in the playoffs, I'll give you that. But if you look at the past few years, look at what Kane has done. He's played some of his best hockey.
I'm going to interrupt you real quick. Is Mike Zimmer. You're familiar with Mike Zimmer, the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, correct?
Uh-huh.
Who's about to be a senior citizen. He's about to turn 65.
Uh-huh.
Have you seen pictures of his girlfriend?
No.
Good God. She's hot.
All right, I got to take a look at this now.
Geez Louise. If you have Instagram, her Instagram is...
I look up Mike Zimmer, and the first option to look up after that is girlfriend.
It's Katerina_Elizabeth. And
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's Mike Zimmer's girlfriend.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff.
So, yeah. But going back, I'm not gonna complain too much about my statement. I guess is more about Jonathan Taves than it is Patrick Kane. But, those two guys are just an absolute huge chunk of the salary cap, and any financial situation going forward, I feel like they have no right to chime in about it, because they're a part of the reason that they're in a cap crunch. is a handful of really big contracts. And, you know, Jonathan Taves is a great player and I love him. But was he making $10 million a year?
He's making a lot of money.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard when like 80% of your cap space is in 4 players.
So the cap space is $73 million. The projected cap. Oh, wait, sorry. What is the... Wait, so Kane and Taves are $10.5 million each. So they are $11 million. And what
I will say it is kind of crazy. I mean, I love Taves, but I don't think he should be getting quite as much as Kane, just from a value standpoint.
What is the actual... So the salary cap is $81 million, and those two combined make $21 million.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
So those two are more than a quarter of the salary cap.
Yeah.
Themselves.
Mm-hmm. And then add Keith and Seabrook on top of that.
And so I'm looking at next year. Alex DeBrincat is going to be making roughly $6.5 million. Kubalik will be making 3.7. And those are the forwards. And then Duncan Keith is 5.5. Calvin DeHaan, 4.5. Connor Murphy, 3.8. Nikita Zadarov, 3.2. Brent Seabrook, just shy of 7. Andrew Shaw, just shy of 4. And then your goalies are Colin Delia's making $1 million and Malcolm Subban's making $850,000.
Mess.
So, yeah, I mean, you've got a lot of guys making a lot of money, and they're not returning the investment. Your defense is still bad. Are these young guys going to take the step forward? I don't know. I mean,
they got prospects they're trying to develop, but that's yet to be seen how good they're actually going to be.
Yeah, Adam Bachfest is 20 years old right now, so I don't know how much you're relying on him.
You look at him, you look at Ian Mitchell, who they're trying to bring up, and it's going to be interesting because you're going to be looking at a lot of unknowns.
In Andrew Shaw, you've got 2 more years of him at almost $4 million.
Yeah.
And the only hope I can have is with the type of surgeries Brent Seabrook has, what if he can't come back? What if you don't medically clear him to come back? Like that long-term IR is the only thing that could really help you.
Yeah, I know. That's a whole situation that's going to be iffy because Brent Seabrook, and I do respect the hell out of him for it. He's going to be doing everything he can to come back. I appreciate the hell out of that guy's drive and willing to play. He wants to be part of the team. It's too bad he's regressed to this with just the age and the miles on him. He was such an important key in those cup wins, and he will always go down as a hero for the Blackhawks. But man, the situation is just tough with him right now. Being older with all that money, just tough.
I mean, honestly, you just look at it from a dollars and cents situation, and if he hangs around and just plays a sport he loves anyway, is he could collect roughly $28 million. So he's got a lot of financial investment, incentive to keep playing at almost $7 million a year.
Yeah, he does.
So, I mean, if you're him, why the hell wouldn't you just keep playing? Put everything you can into playing. It's not like he's making $1 million a year and you're like, okay, after taxes, I'm probably looking at $500,000 and that's a lot of money, but wouldn't I be better off making sure I could walk regular for the rest of my life? But this is a huge chunk of change. I don't know, man. If I was him, I probably wouldn't want to. Hang him up either. But we'll see how that goes. It's gonna be a tough fight there.
It is, and it stinks that like the reputation of Brent Seabrook right now is being looked at differently because the last few years have been very poor and all the money's made. I would hate to look back on his career and say, hey, remember this guy? Remember how he just ate all that money and, was kind of handcuffed the team? And instead of remembering that he was just an absolute key piece to winning 3 Stanley Cups here.
Mm-hmm.
That's how he should be remembered, as the guy that was key in those cup wins.
I'm not going to argue that. It's just...
Right now, though, the situation is just not good. That's just the fact of it.
Yeah. I can't pay you today for what you did in the past.
Right. You pay for future performance, not past performance.
And, but the Blackhawks, they had since our last episode, they've had the draft. And, I'm not upset with the guys that they drafted. I don't know a lot about them, but it looks like everybody they drafted was overdrafted. They drafted them early. So looking at everybody, they were all scheduled, slated to be guys that were expected to be drafted a half a round to a round later than they were. So it seems like the Blackhawks, every single guy was drafted earlier than they thought. And that's fine. That's fine when the guys work out. When guys work out, you go, okay, I don't care that they drafted him early. But if they didn't, then you start asking questions like, well, who could we have gotten had we not overdrafted?
Yeah, that's a question we probably won't be getting any answers to anytime soon. Their first draft was the left winger from Germany. The kid's physical. I think they need a bit more physical play. So I think that's, it makes sense for what they're looking at. And, like we've said before, it's harder to draft for need in the NHL when it's not necessarily like the NBA or the NFL. Because in the NHL, if you go straight to the NHL, you got to be one of the top elite talents. You got to be a Crosby or a Kane or somebody like that, where it's not necessarily that way at the NHL, where most guys have to go to develop. They drafted goaltending, which they needed, and they waited to do that. They didn't reach for goaltending, which I think is okay. The number one obvious choice for goaltender was already gone in the draft, the highest guy. So I think they handled that okay, going after, some good scoring, physical talent early on, and then getting the goaltending, because goaltending can be developed. You don't necessarily have to draft it high end. So it'll remain to be seen how these draft picks turn out. I don't really have a strong feeling about any of these guys, but, we'll see, I guess. I don't know. I can't say much more than we're going to be putting a lot more stock into these guys just because, we are going through transition. We are trying to develop more talent. So, it's going to be interesting to see how it pans out.
Their first round pick, Lucas Reichel, just turned 18 years old in May.
Yeah, he's a young kid.
His dad is my age.
Wow.
So I mean, you're right. They're absolutely drafting. They're drafting kids that are very young, and they're also playing. They're also playing against younger competition. They're also playing foreign hockey, which is different than North American hockey. And so, there's going to be a learning curve, and it's going to be several years before these guys come in. What year was it that Corey Crawford started regularly playing for the Blackhawks?
2010, 2011, and he was drafted in 2003.
Yep. So that was a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And the goalie they drafted, so he's a little bit, no, actually he's younger. He just turned 18 in July, and he's going to be a college student. So just so young. Drew Comesso. It's insane that these guys are just so young. So they went first round with a left winger, then a goaltender, then a left winger, and a defenseman in the second round, and then they drafted defense in fourth and fifth rounds, and so which is a departure because the last several years they've used draft picks high on defensemen. But on Reichel, the consensus is they did reach on him a little bit, but they feel like with their success rate of scouting European players that he's worth the selection. He's a strong player in the neutral zone, extremely polished puck handling skills. He's going to have to get bigger and stronger. And he's probably going to be a second or third line player. The goalie in 11 games last season posted a .917 save percent, 2.01 goals against, and an 8-2-0 record to his credit. He was a stabilizing presence for Team USA at the Five Nations tournament, and was praised for his ability to read the opposition. The third round pick is a left winger from South Bend. The second, third round pick is a defenseman who was a high schooler last year. The fourth rounder is a defenseman who's a big kid, 6'3" from the Czech Republic. And he was the 27th ranked skater out of Europe. So I felt like they maybe got a decent return on him. And then the fifth rounder was a big defenseman from Canada. And then a center from the OHL. And then their last was another defenseman who's 6'8", 216 pounds, which that's not a lot of pounds, but that's a lot of feet and inches.
Yes, it is.
I'm trying to picture what somebody that's 6'8", 218 pounds look like, and I'm picturing a rake, a beanpole, a sunflower.
A sunflower.
The Blackhawks drafted a sunflower.
Bold.
Yeah. So, this is. I think we're in this for the long haul, man. With the Blackhawks, I think we're gonna see some rough times here because. I think to truly get to the promised land, I think we're going to have to shed some of these contracts, and that is just going to be time.
Yep. Let's
see. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Nope. I think I've said my piece.
Yeah, not really anything to go on with the Cubs and the Sox at this point.
I think next week I want to do some more Cub talk because we've heard from Theo Epstein. We've looked at a few scenarios here. I have some Cubs thoughts, so I'm going to share those next week.
Breaking news: the Falcons fired their head coach and GM.
I saw that, and the Lakers won the championship.
Did they?
Yeah.
I was hoping.
I was hoping for a Game 7.
Yeah, I was hoping for a Game 7, but I did hear a quote after the game, the last game, and Jimmy Butler was all talking I, and I'm like, man, like, really? I thought you'd outgrown that.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. Please hit subscribe, however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, TuneIn app, Spotify, Google Play, etc. Make sure that you share this podcast. That's how we grow the show. Share it with your friends that are fans of Chicago sports. Follow us on social media at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com. And again, thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like Remember, New Yorkers, smoking crack is not legal on planes.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears. Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.